Hello, and welcome back to the Bosco's Boys podcast. Happy Monday. I hope your day is going well and you have a great week. We've got a good show today, talking about some recruiting news in football and recapping the open practice for spring football. And we're doing it with our good friend Derek Young. Before we talk to Derek Young, though, let me talk to you about our friends that sponsor the show. Starting with, of course, Bet Online. It's that time of year again, and all eyes are now on pro basketball and the start of Major League Baseball. Royals are 2-0. Who would have predicted that? And, of course, the NBA, the conference races are heating up as teams prepare to make their run for the playoffs. And if baseball is your first love, BetOnline also has you covered. If you love hockey, golf, MMA, championship boxing, if you bet on that Final Four game against with Gonzaga against UCLA, that was incredible. One of the greatest games I've ever seen. That would have been a good one. You've got the national championship to bet on as well. Every sport, every game, every matchup. BetOnline has you covered for all the odds and real-time updates. It's the place to be for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to place and check. Use your mobile phone and bring home the game with BetOnline. And of course, I'm sure some of you are aware, but we have been doing locker room shows. It's a new app that's kind of like a live room that you can chat with us on, and you can chat with other people that join the room. It's really cool, live audio only sports talk platform. It's free to download and to use. You can talk to me, Scott, other fans, even maybe some athletes, insiders in real time. It's perfect for watch parties, debates, post-game breakdowns, and reacting to breaking news. Share your own just kidding. I'm not supposed to read that part. My own experiences that we've had on the app, I thought that this was going to be really stupid, and I was annoyed that that this was something that we were going to have to do. But after doing it with Scott the first time and a bunch of other, people that have listened to the show for a while, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. We did it during a basketball game, March Madness, and we talked about a lot of breaking news like Dejuan Gordon leaving and where the basketball program was heading, and it was really fun to be able to sit and talk in a room with different people that we've gotten to know over the years and that have different perspectives and share the pain and the grief of the lows of the basketball program and what we think the highs are going to be, what the future is going to be. It was a great time, and I'm excited to do it again. I think we're going to be doing it, I want to say, every Thursday at 6 p.m., I may have to revise that at some point. Check the Twitter feed. We will be keeping that updated with the next time we do a locker room show. But I think it's Thursday at 6 p.m. It'll be a really good time, and we can do it pretty much whenever we want. If something crazy happens, we can open up a locker room and use it as an episode, and anybody can join. You just have to download the app, and it's free to use, free to join, and it's a good time. So get on the Locker Room app and come see what the fun's all about. And last but not least, a new sponsor, Kaenon Sunglasses. Your outdoor experience could be better, clearly better. Kaenon Sunglasses are made exclusively with polarized lenses for optimal clarity. Using Japanese optics, Kaenon's lenses are clearer, lighter, and stronger than other lenses and are nearly impossible to scratch. With frames handcrafted in Italy, Kaenon sunglasses elevate your experiences outside with a degree of clarity beyond your wildest imagination. So, use the exclusive code KaenonCast15 at Kaenon.com to receive 15% off on your first pair. That's KaenonCast15, KaenonCast15. Kaenon, clearly better. With that being said, check out our sponsors. Head to all those places. Join us on Locker Room app. Let's talk to Derek Young about spring ball and some recruiting.
It's the moment of the evening every K-State fan enjoys. Settle down and pour a whiskey, crack open a LaCroix. Please put your hands together and make a little noise for your favorite Wildcatters, the handsome Bosco boys.
Ooh, Bosco's boys. Come on, boys.
Welcome back to the Bosco's Boys podcast. We're here with a familiar friend from KSO, Mr. Derek Young, the recruiting genius, and now the top man at KSO. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Just got back from Lawrence. Looked at a house that we're probably gonna rent for the next couple of years, and yeah, about to have a baby. So things are moving quickly. But
Enjoy Lawrence.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'll make it work. But let's get into the Cats a little bit. This past Saturday was open spring practice. Before we get into that, I'm basically just going to run through position groups, and I want to get a kind of a progress report or what's hot, what's cold. We'll touch on each rapid fire with some details sprinkled in there. But before we do that, some Saturday recruiting news. Who was on campus for official visits? What can you share about the group of guys that made that trip?
Yeah, well, it was more, I guess, unofficial visit just because it's still a dead period. And actually, they were only permitted to do so because the practice was open to the public. So it kind of turned into a recruiting event of sorts, but there wasn't allowed to be any interaction still between anybody on the football staff and the recruits. So while it was cool for them to be able to, I guess, go to the stadium, watch practice and stuff of that nature, it still wasn't akin to what a typical recruiting visit would be, unfortunately, because they have to follow the rules of the dead period. But they did have guys, some of their top targets were there. Linebacker Carson Willich from Blue Springs, the trio from Eudora, with one of them being a commit, and Silas Eder, but also his teammates that have offers. They're 2023 prospects. That's tight end Jaden Ham and receiver Jaden Bender. Nick Herzog, the offensive line, one of the major offensive line targets from Blue Valley High School in the Kansas City Metro. He was there. I'm probably forgetting a little bit. Oh yeah, I think there was, I believe, a pretty highly ranked receiver was there, and Jarrell Williams from Alabama, and the same for a defensive end that was there from Dallas, and Chase Kennedy.
Any buzz coming from that group of players? Any new developments that you're willing to share?
No, I don't think there's anything imminent. Perhaps maybe with the receiver from Alabama, if anything. He's the only one that's kind of, I guess, sped up a timetable of sorts and shared on his social media that he could be making a college decision soon. And the timing would certainly suggest that the Wildcats are in at least pretty good shape there, at the very least, and maybe significantly good shape. The other ones, I don't feel like anyone's really ready to pounce on a college decision of sorts right now. I know at times we felt like maybe Herzog would be an early decider. Maybe Carson Willich would be an early decider, but I just don't think it's really trending in that direction for either one. I think both are pretty insistent at this point that they want to take official visits when the recruiting period opens up, and that might be in June, as that's why we're seeing official visits being scheduled for that month. And that's probably why they've held off a decision or are not in a rush to do so, because there's not a whole lot of incentive in making your college choice now when the dead period might finally come to a close.
Right. Well, if you don't have any more recruiting nuggets to share, I say we just jump into spring ball.
Yeah.
Open practice yesterday, Saturday, and let's just start with the offense and start with the most important position, quarterback. How sharp was Skylar looking after being sidelined with his lengthy injury? And does the number 7 suit him?
Number 7 suits him. It's a number that looks good on him. He's got to improve quite a bit to live up to what that number is meant at Kansas State. And I don't think, and this is nothing against Skylar, but he's probably not played at a caliber yet or even close to a caliber yet in his career that would be reminiscent of the 7s that did wear that number at that position. So hopefully he can make that kind of jump. He was pretty sharp. I think I only saw 1 or 2 throws that were just, I wouldn't say cringy, but weren't the best. But that's, over a pretty large sample size. But still, I guess an observation I kind of made was it didn't seem like he was full go still, which, I don't think anyone expected it to. And he's still ahead of schedule, but he didn't take a ton of reps, at least that we saw. And then the number 2, I think, is clearly at this point, Will Howard. Probably not a huge shock since he was the guy they went to once Skylar was injured a season ago. And not a lot of time has elapsed between now and then, but he's improved. I think he has more command of his throws. So that was really good. And I thought he had a decent day. He was probably the most consistent of the 4 quarterbacks. Probably didn't have as many wow throws as Jaron Lewis or Skylar Thompson, but he was probably the most steady, I would say. And he did make probably the biggest mistake though, when he threw an interception to Nate Matlack during some scrimmage action. And then the third is Jaron Lewis right now, but I think he's nipping at the heels of Will Howard. I think he's kind of closed the gap. It sounds like he's had a really good spring, and he had a really good day. There were some decisions that he got away with that were pretty poor decisions, and then some throws where you just shake your head and that was pretty impressive. So he's more of has more polarity to his game, where sometimes he's really, really good and sometimes he's really, really not. And then Jake Rubley's fourth, and I think he's clearly fourth. So, he talked about redshirting this upcoming year, and it makes a lot of sense for him because he's just, playing like he should still be a senior in high school, which he should be. And plus, he didn't really get to play that much his senior year of high school. So he's a little rough around the edges and still has to have the game come to him at this point.
Moves to running backs. We know what Deuce Vaughn is, how the coaches want to use him. But how do the backup running backs look to you in this open practice? And, who do you anticipate? I know it's super early to call, but who do you anticipate, bearing the carry responsibilities behind Deuce Vaughn?
Yeah, this has the potential to be the greatest position on Kansas State's offense, I think. And I know a lot of it's unproven and a lot of it's just potential and what they could be and not necessarily what they have been or might be, but the potential of this room is probably higher than at any spot, I think, in terms of a collective unit, because there really isn't a player that I can point to that they're really going to use where I'm like, they're okay. It's like all of them, they could be pretty good. I mean, Deuce is Deuce, as we know, and we know what we're going to get out of him. But Joe Irvin is really, really good, or he has a chance to be really good. He's been really good in practice. He was really good on Saturday. I thought he was really good his true freshman year before he got injured and suffered that concussion. And then his, season was kind of just trickled away after that. They kept his red shirt, and then that made way for Jacardi Wright. And that's something that folks forget. Everyone wants to talk about Jacardi Wright. And I think because he's the big unicorn, a big back that's kind of a unicorn nowadays. And something that the game's kind of going away from a little bit, but Joe Irvin played before Jacardi Wright. And that was intentional. There was a reason for that. It's because he was, ready quicker and perhaps a little bit better of a football player. And he probably still is, even after sitting out all last season. I think he's probably the most complete back they have on the entire roster, just because Jacardi has some of his limitations. Deuce Vaughn obviously has some limitations just because of his size. So I think the most complete back is probably Joe Irvin. I think he has a chance to be really, really good this season. Keon Mosey has seemed very improved. We knew he was pretty fast, but he looked even faster on Saturday, and that's probably because the playbook and the game's slowing down for him, so he's able to think less and just go out there and go. Jacardi Wright was better than the last time we saw him. He had a up and down season a year ago, to which he didn't get the reps that people were anticipating getting because he was just not heading in the right direction. Well, he's headed in the right direction now, but he's still probably behind Joe Irvin and probably on the same level as Keon Mosey, but they offer different things. Keon Mosey offers you speed. Jacardi Wright offers you a little bit more power, and he was actually a better weapon in the passing game on Saturday than I thought he'd ever be. So that's an interesting wrinkle as well.
Potential wise, totally agree with you. It seems like there's a lot of depth there with guys that have, totally different skill sets and athletic abilities. And the best part about it is they're all very young. Vaughn, Irvin, Wright, Mosey, guys that all bring different aspects of athleticism and explosiveness and size. It's exciting to me. Let's move into the wide receivers. A group that has struggled mightily over the past year with consistency, with injury. Let's talk about Malik Knowles first. I think, we talked off pod last year, like before COVID. Actually, I think this was the first time, we got out to like a bar in public. It was like in May or something. And it was before the season. And we were talking about how Malik Knowles has potential to be like a top, 5 receiver in the Big 12. And I still believe that. Is he looking fresh and healthy? I think that's the biggest key. What are your expectations for him if he can stay, away from the injury bug? Still feel that way?
Yeah, the injury bug's always going to be his question. He went through this entire spring without getting injured. So that's about 4 or 5 weeks of actual football without really any setbacks whatsoever. And, I don't know if he's ever had that kind of extended period of health. I know it doesn't sound long, but that's been how much of a injury history that he has had. So maybe he's taking care of his body a little bit better. Maybe that has left a mark. Maybe he's a little more durable because he added a little bit more weight. Or maybe he was just going through a lot of bad luck and stuff of that nature, but he had a really good spring, his best, extended time that he's had since he's been at Kansas State. And I definitely believe that he's the most talented receiver on this roster by far. It's not close. And I think if he had a completely healthy season with no setbacks whatsoever, I think his ceiling would be first team all Big 12. That's how good he could be if he was given a full 12 games at full health. We just haven't seen that. But in terms of a skill set and talent standpoint, that's what we're talking about in terms of his upside and potential. The unit as a whole, it sounded like made progress in the spring. Keenan Garber sounds like he's been flashing a little bit. We've heard that from the coaches. We've heard that from the players in media availabilities when we meet with them. They all bring him up, even if not directly asked about. So that's a positive sign. And I've also heard, just from other sources that, it's not just pumping a guy up or a little hyperbole. They've bought into it. They think it's a real thing that transpired this spring. So hopefully it continues on through the rest of the offseason. And he's ready to be a contributor in fall camp. Shabazz Taylor was out all spring because he got injured. I think it was the last game of the season against Texas. So he wasn't available this spring. Ty Bowman's a walk-on that they really, really like. And it wouldn't surprise me if he got some run at some point this year. I think he's going to play. I think Jalen Travis might play a little bit. He was a true freshman this past year. They never saw the field and wasn't really ready. I think he has a chance to be ready. And then, of course, you got Phillip Brooks. So those are kind of the dudes I think we're talking about in terms of who might play right away. Brendan Hawkins is a true freshman that enrolled early and played in spring football. I don't know that he's necessarily pushing for a rotational spot yet. Certainly not something that I've heard. And of course, RJ Garcia is a true freshman from Tampa that will be here, that'll arrive in Manhattan, I think, in June. He has a skill set that could play right away. So it'll be interesting if he can grasp things quick enough to do so.
Do you know when Shabazz Taylor might be anticipated to be integrated back into the team after his injury?
Yeah, I don't know if he'll do much over the summer or not. I imagine that they'll be slow with him, because you would think with the timetable of what had happened that he'll probably be ready around July or August at the earliest. So it might be pushing it a little bit to get him ready for game one, but we'll see.
Chat a little bit about tight ends and fullbacks. Daniel Imatorbhebhe, coaches were, buzzing a little bit about him a month ago. How's he progressed since? I have high expectations for him, not only because he's got an incredible name, but, after seeing some highlights of him, he looks like he fits the part, looks like a talented tight end. I'm excited.
Yeah, he's really talented. I think just from a gifted, like God's gift set circumstance, he's probably more talented than Briley Moore was. And I've heard that, to be quite honest. So if he could stay healthy, we're talking about probably a pass catching weapon might be even more effective than Briley Moore. He's an explosive athlete, and he showed glimpses of that on Saturday. So I think he has a chance to be really good in the passing game. I think he's probably a little bit more challenged when it comes to blocking, even more than Briley. So that's something that'll have to progress to an extent to kind of keep everyone honest out there on the football field and the opponents. But I do think his upside is pretty high. They just, if he's healthy for full 12 games, and we're going to say this for quite a few guys, I feel like, because there's some injury prone players on this roster that have high upside. So it's a little bit of a high risk, high reward situation with them. Malik Knowles being one and Daniel Imatorbhebhe being another.
Where's Sammy Wheeler right now in terms of, his injury rehab?
He's 100%.
He's 100%.
Yeah, he played without limitation. It was a collarbone injury for him, so it was only like a 6-7 week
Gotcha.
thing. So he was ready for the spring. I think he's probably working number 2 tight end, maybe number 3. Nick Leonard's not really a traditional tight end, so it just depends how you want to phrase it. But I think Leonard's, Wheeler, and Immatter Bebe are the main guys they're going to go to.
How's my boy Jackson Ian looking?
I would say he looks a little bit more in shape than he has in the past, but I don't say this to be mean, but I'm not sure it matters because oddly enough, he looks very, very pudgy, but still is very, very athletic when he's on the field. He's one of the oddest players I've ever seen just because he looks like he's going to run like a 6'4" 40, but he probably runs under 5. Like he's far quicker, twitchier, and athletic than someone that shape should ever be.
There is going to be a time where he absolutely kills somebody, like with the ball in his hands. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, he's going to be a bulldog that just mashes people the older he gets.
Last unit offensively is, a unit that's incredibly important, the offensive line. People say that it's got probably the most depth on the team, or one of the units that does. Who do you anticipate to kind of be that starting lineup offensive line, and do you anticipate that there's just going to be a lot of shuffling in and out since September, or until September?
I think that they're probably confident in most of what they would throw out there in terms of a starting unit. There's probably a spot or two that remain up for grabs for the most part, I think. But I think Cooper Beebe is going to start, obviously. Where that is probably remains to be seen still a little bit. But right now, he's the starting left tackle, just because they wanted to nestle Christian Duffie into one side and not really screw with him like they did last year. They thought the switching sides kind of messed with him and hindered his effectiveness. So Christian Duffie is going to start at right tackle. I don't think that's going to change between now and September. I think Cooper Beebe is the starting left tackle. That could change just based off, if someone like Carver Willis can really turn it on between now and then. But I would pencil in and starting lineup right now as the 2 tackles being Cooper Beebe and Christian Duffie. Left guard for me would still be Josh Rivas. I'm not so sure that's a spot that's locked up. I think he could be getting pushed by, a guy here or a guy there. Ben Adler, Taylor Portier, guys like that are possible answers. Josh Rivas is an answer. Could be Cooper Beebe if they decide to, play Carver Willis in the starting lineup at left tackle. But right now, Josh Rivas is a left guard. But I think, I don't know if he's really necessarily punched his spot just because they have built a room full of competition. But right now, I think he's the leader in the clubhouse in that particular spot. I think Noah Johnson's going to start at center, and I don't think that's changing between now and September. I think he is the kind of the anchor and the fulcrum of that unit and the leader and the go-to guy, and I don't think they'll mess with that whatsoever. So I think he's going to start at center no matter what. The right guard at this point, in the spring, it was Ben Adler. Last year, it was Ben Adler until he was tucked inside of COVID protocols. But right now, I think if they had to play a game tomorrow, assuming everyone was healthy, that would be healthy, it would be Taylor Portier, I think, would be the starting right guard. I think that's and Taylor Portier missed all of spring, but he's someone they really, really like and someone that really, really finished last year on a very, very strong note. So I think the battle there could be between Ben Adler and Taylor Portier, and that'll probably be decided in fall camp, but that's probably Portier's to lose. In my opinion. And then obviously, like I said, right tackle, I think is no doubt about it going to be Christian Duffie.
Well, it's an offense that's young, but certainly full of potential. And I hope that as a whole, they can stay healthy, because I do think that there are some fun weapons in there. And I'm hoping that that line can stay healthy as well. Let's get into the defense. And I want to start with the linebacker room, because I think it's one of the more intriguing groups this spring. And I want to start with the Utah State transfer, Eric Munoz. Not a lot of excitement about him coming in, but I think he will have his benefits with his experience, his age in the locker room. What are you hearing about Eric as far as ability and how he's fitting in with, the linebacker room? And where is he at in the pecking order? And did you see a whole lot from him yesterday in the open practice?
I think he's fitted nicely. I think he has a really good chemistry with his teammates already, and I think that one of the assets to adding him was his maturity and his experience, because they lost a ton of snaps and experience when they lost Elijah Sullivan and Justin Hughes. I mean, they were in Manhattan for 6 years. That's a lot to replace in terms of experience and leadership standpoint. So I think they thought that Eric Munoz was important in that department, and I think he still is and will be. We did see a little bit of him on Saturday, and I would say that I think I had the wrong impression or interpretation of his ability, not in terms of caliber of play, but in terms of stylistically. That's because it was a mystery, right? He played at Utah State. None of us have, religiously watched Utah State Aggie football, and he had a career that was interesting. Took an interesting path to get here as well. So, but he was a little bit looked a little bit lighter than I was anticipating. I guess I was more anticipating like an inside linebacker type, but I thought he was a little bit lighter, someone that might play on the outside, because really what stuck out to me was that he can actually cover quite a bit of ground. He can move pretty well. He's just a little bit lighter and not as big. I think the guy that's really kind of taken off at linebacker is kind of taking control of the room and is kind of the alpha is probably Daniel Green. I think he took that step that they needed him to in the spring. So I think he's probably your number one linebacker. But I think after that, it's probably a free for all. It's going to be between guys like Cody Fletcher, who's had a lot of snaps in his career at Kansas State. After Daniel Green, we're talking about Cody Fletcher, Eric Munoz, who we already discussed. And I think Wayne Jones is going to fit in there somewhere. It sounds like he's really emerged and found a more natural fit at linebacker. And I will say that even watching him during the open practice on Saturday, it looked like he was more settled and comfortable on the defensive side of the ball than I've ever seen him. Like I still have some doubts about how that's going to work, but all signs so far point to that being a pretty successful move.
I love to hear that about Daniel Green. I feel like, I hadn't heard a lot about him for a while. And I personally think he has the highest ceiling of any of our linebackers at the moment. So it's good for me to hear that he's taken on that alpha role. Now let's jump into the secondary. Another a position that seems to be lacking bodies. But I think we have some talented people in that secondary. Any updates on who we think in the roster now will fill the nickel position? And is there any names? I know we're wanting to be active in the transfer portal for that nickel position or to create some more depth in the secondary. Are there any names in the transfer portal that you've been hearing at all?
I think they have playable depth at corner because I think they have 4 guys there that they like, and that's Echo Boydo, Julius Brents, Justin Gardner still here, and he's going to be your third corner. And I think that's pretty good for a Big 12 roster. I think there's probably a lot of Big 12 teams that probably wish they had that playable depth, and that's not even counting T. Denson, who I think is still going to find a role there as the fourth corner, because Kansas State will play 4 corners, and those third and fourth corners will probably get 20-25 snaps a game, which is nothing to really be shy about. I mean, that's a significant number. They do need more corners, but they need just to build out the bottom of the roster in terms of corner, in terms of playable corners. I think they have what they need, just the right amount. And that's why they don't necessarily want to move one of them to nickel, because they're in a good spot at corner in terms of who's going to play. And for nickel, that's, still to be figured out. The greatest thing would be TJ Smith coming to a full recovery by the time the season starts, and you roll with him. And you still probably need someone else, and they'll go into the transfer portal and hope to find someone quality enough to land. At this point, I think they've chased 2 or 3 guys, and Jaquan Amos was one of them, but he picked Iowa State. I think there was a Jamari Harris as well from Kentucky, and he went somewhere else too. So I think they'll keep looking, but they definitely need a nickel in the transfer portal. Ryan Hennington played quite a bit there in the spring, it sounds like. That and linebacker, he's still, going back and forth at multiple spots. And then at safety, I think your starters are likely to be Russ East and Jerome McPherson. And then maybe if TJ Smith's healthy, he can provide depth at safety too. But I guess some of these guys, you'd like to them have the luxury of only having to focus on one position, not multiple. But they're going to have to ask that of some of these guys. Maybe Malachi Mitchell can, emerge and provide some depth at safety. Amaris Brown, I think, missed most of the spring, but Malachi Mitchell, there was been some whispers. They haven't been really significant or profound, but there's been whispers that he's headed in the right direction. And I thought he had a really good practice on Saturday too. And then Ross Elder is also still on the roster. I think he was a little bit banged up this spring as well. And he'll probably be one of the backups to Jerome McPherson and Russ East. But I mean, there it is again. Not a lot of bodies there either. They did have a big recruiting class of safeties in this past one, and who knows what will be of TJ Smith. I think he'll play this year. I don't know where and I don't know when, but I think that's going to happen. So I mean, to be quite honest, they could take another transfer safety and it wouldn't hurt at all either. I don't think they will, but we're talking about them being pretty thin at nickel and safety right now.
Yeah, I worry about the secondary, although, I mean, I think we have some serious talent there. Echo, Brinson, Gardner, that's a really nice 3 guys at the corner position. Safety scares me a lot, just in terms of depth, lack of depth. I'm not that worried about nickel. I think we'll find a guy, and it's like, I think we can find a guy to find at nickel. But safety scares me a lot. Ross Elder on the conveyor belt line worries me. We saw just kind of where we were in the tail end of last season and how much that lack of depth really killed us. So hopefully we can stay healthy.
Getting TJ Smith back could go a long way.
I agree. The missile at nickel, let's put him there. D-line, there's some big names to replace, but I have faith in the crop coming through. I want to ask particularly about Nate Maclack. I have high hopes for him. I was excited when we got him as the first commit, I think, of 2020. And it sounds like he had a nice day yesterday and looks like his body's matured a little bit, and he's added on some weight. Do you anticipate him getting any actual reps this year, or is he still kind of on the fringe?
Yeah, he's probably, if we can remember how the minimal snaps that Felix Anudike got last year, where it seemed like he was getting, maybe 5 to 10 snaps a game, and they were just kind of getting his feet wet, but you could see the talent and the upside was emanating from him, but he wasn't quite ready to play a bunch of snaps. I think that's maybe what we get out of Nate Matlack this year, which I think is still a great step in the right direction. His body has matured a little bit, and I do think he's going to be a really, really good football player at Kansas State. I think we see the first glimpses of him this season, but just in very, very small doses. But I think we get some, his trajectory and the path that he's on right now. I think the biggest, when we start seeing him regularly, I think it will be in 2022.
That sounds about right. Who's competing right now for the D tackle position?
The defensive tackle, I think Timothy Horn might be the best defensive tackle on the team. There's a lot of people that really love what he's going to provide for the Wildcats and think that he was just that good during the spring. So Timothy Horn might be numero uno already at defensive tackle, and it's great that he's already making that kind of impact and impressing people that much, because Drew Wiley was really, really good, and that's the guy he's replacing, I think. And I think Jalen Pickles sounds like he's taken and starting to take off a little bit and made a large improvement as well. I've always liked Eli Huggins. So those 3 guys, I think, can be really, really good and have a chance to make that a really, really good position. You'd love to bust out a 4th guy or a 5th guy, but I mean, Robert Hentz, Kamari Gaines, guys like that are possible. They were junior college additions a year ago, and they can make the defensive line really, really good if they continue to rise their level of play. It sounds like Tyrone Talini has as well. So I don't worry about the defensive line. I'm kind of with you, even though they lost Drew Wiley, even though they lost Wyatt Hubert at defensive end. I think that they probably, unless Timothy Horn is as good as what people think he might be, they probably don't have anyone as good as those 2. But I think they have more guys ready to play. I think they have a better group, a better committee, and more depth at the defensive line this year, and just probably a little bit less of the star power.
And I think we have some decent star power on the defensive end position too. I think I think the sky can be the limit for him. Just the way he runs, the way he moves. I don't know. I don't have a lot of worry about the D line. And I'm excited. I'm excited going forward. And then let's go ahead.
Yeah, I would say I think I don't know if they have the star power they did last year. I think they got some guys that can be star power guys like Timothy Horn, maybe Khalid Duke, maybe Felix Anudike. I think Boom is solid and should start too. And I don't know if he's going to really turn into a star all of a sudden, but last year was his best season. And he's really a really solid football player in the Big 12 that could play for a number of teams. So I think he's a good addition or good to have. I'm glad he returned too, because it really makes that deep room that much deeper. And obviously we talked about Nate Matlack. So I think they don't have the star power they did last year, but they got a few guys that could get there. I don't know if it will be this year.
Yeah, maybe not as much star power, but I would say more quality depth from top to bottom with guys that are ready to go and that can sub in and sub out without as big of a drop off. Last but not least, let's talk about the special teams. We are special teams you, for God's sake. Who are you hearing that's taking reps as returners? And how is the kicking game going? We got to replace our little man, our sharpshooter that was, a pretty consistently good kicker. Honestly, won us some games over the past few years in Blake Lynch.
Yeah, I think the kicker will either be we're talking about Ty Zentner was probably, I think Ty Zentner and Jack Bloomer basically rotated almost every other punt last year, it seemed like. I don't know if that will be the case again. It could be. They're both still here. So you got Zentner and Bloomer there punting. They both kicked field goals yesterday or on Saturday as well. And Ty Zentner has a very, very strong leg. You're talking about someone that's probably, he can make it from 60 plus, and he did a couple of times on Saturday. Probably not as accurate. Jack Bloomer kicked a little bit. I don't think he'll be the kicker. Tatum Winkle is another kicker on the team that took reps on Saturday as well. He was probably more consistent, and he's a Butler Community College transfer from a year ago, walk on. So I think in terms of kicker, it might be Zentner, it could be Winkle, and it could be Chris Tennant. He's not on campus yet, but he was, I think, rated as either number 1 or number 2 kicker in the country. And he's from Mill Valley High School in Kansas City that they landed. He's like 6'5". This dude's a very big kicker too. So I think there's potential for him to be the kicker. But obviously he hasn't arrived at Kansas State just yet. Returning wise, Phil Brooks didn't take any reps on Saturday, but I probably think that's because maybe he was a little shaken up or that was by design. I still think it would be a shock if he wasn't the main guy back there. He was the main guy the last year, and even pretty much the main guy the year before. He shared it with Youngblood. But the guy on Saturday that took the most reps, I think, as a kicker and punt returner was Russ East, and he did that for Louisville. So in terms of kick returners, I would expect maybe it to be Brooks and Russ East, and punt returner to be Brooks. Eka Boydo got a couple reps as a kick returner too. I think he fumbled both of them, so I don't know that we'll see a ton of that. I'm trying to think. Malik Knowles has returned kicks in the past. I think he took a kick back for a touchdown against Mississippi State 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. I think that might have been the game, or maybe it was against Texas. One of those games. Either way, I think he had a couple reps. Seth Porter took a couple reps. I think that might be it. No one else is coming to mind, but I think it'll be Brooks and Yeast, and I would expect maybe Malik Bowles to get an opportunity in spot duty.
Classic Grant. That pretty much wraps it up. I'm excited. I'm in the camp of this program, is in good hands and in good shape at the moment going forward. And I don't really bear a whole lot of weight of what happened last year. It's kind of hard to, especially the further removed we get away from it, the more you realize that last year was just an enormous shit show. And regardless of what would have happened, it would have been difficult to take that season without a grain of salt, even if we were, 8-3 or whatever. But that's pretty much all I have for you today. I think that was a pretty good roundup of spring ball. And hey, if there's anything else I'm missing, anything else that you want to share with us, let me know. Take the floor.
No, just meet me at the Cat Head, right?
Not quite. Otherwise, I would just say subscribe to kstateonline.com to get the daily in-depth coverage of K-State sports and the most accurate and up-to-date recruiting news. And of course, a great and welcoming community of K-Staters on the boards willing to, welcome you with the grace and open arms. But that's all we got for you today. It's Monday. Have a good show, everybody. A good week. Thanks for coming on the show, Derek. Meet me at the Cat Head. Just kidding. Do not meet me at the Cat Head yet. We got to talk to you about our sponsors real quick before we do that. And you guys remember them. It's Bet Online. They have all the hot betting action. NBA, baseball, hockey, golf, MMA, championship boxing. Bet Online. They have it all. Every sport, every game, every matchup. They have you covered. Just head to Bet Online and you can get in all your bets. They've got all the up-to-date and fastest, easiest ways to place and check in all your favorite sports bets all the time, so check them out. Also, join us on Thursdays, I think at 6 for locker room shows. Anybody can join. It's free. It's fun. Who knows what we're going to talk about next time. We hope to see you there. Just download it for free, and it's free to join. And, of course, last but not least, Kaenon Sunglasses. Outdoor experiences could be better. Way better. Kaenon sunglasses are made exclusively with polarized lenses for optimal clarity. They're Italian-made frames. Kaenon, they only make polarized lenses. They're very hard to scratch, and the design and manufacturers are high-performance eyewear to be clearly better than any other sunglasses you've tried before. So use the code KaenonCast15. That's KaenonCast15, and that will get you 15% off your first pair of Kaenon's sunglasses. It's a great product, so go check them out. And now you may meet me at the Cat Head.
He was so kind, such a gentleman, tied to the ocean side. Lighting a match on the suitcases, latch in the fading ruffled the fur of the collie neath the table, ran out the door through the dark, carved out his initials in the bar. Then the earth shook, that was all that it took for the dream to break. All the loose ends would surround me again in the shape of your face. What makes me love you despite the reservations? What do I see in your eyes besides my reflection hanging high? Are you off somewhere residing in Kansas?